All right. Hey, guys. Welcome to this episode of Real Live Talk. I'm pumped that you're here to check out today's conversation. I've got an awesome guest with me today, but I do want to just say thank you guys for taking the time to check out this episode. I pray that the content blesses you. If it does, if it adds any kind of value to your life or challenges you in some way, if you consider subscribing, sharing, leaving a review, depending on if you're watching this live or listening on one of the podcast platforms, that'll determine what you're able to do there. But I appreciate you guys so much, and I'm excited for this conversation. Pastor Jessica Hurlbut, is back on the podcast today. Jessica is a pastor, writer, ultra runner, adoption advocate, podcast host, and mother of five. Jessica and her husband, Greg, are the lead pastors at New Testament Church in Messina, New York. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring Jessica up on the screen. Jessica, how you doing? It's so great to have you back with me today.
You don't have to call me pastor.
Pastor Jessica. Okay.
Don't call me pastor wife either. So I don't know what you call me. Just call me Jessica.
just call you Jessica. Do you prefer? Does anybody call you Jess, or does everybody call you Jessica?
No, actually, that's typical Jess. Yeah.
Do you prefer one or the other?
I don't care. No, as long as it's not okay. Jess. My mom used to call me Messy Jessie all growing up, so that's no.
Messy Jessie.
I'm not even messy either, so it's very. It's one of those word curses you had to break off, you know.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm pumped that you're here. Thank you again for coming back on the show. I had you on. I think it was like back in circa August of last year. Yeah. And then I was able to interview Greg as well at one point. And back when I had you on, it was before the latest Adoption Day run, which took place in November. It was before your podcast kicked off, the Full Spectrum Parent Podcast. And so I'm curious about what turns life has taken since I last spoke to you. First of all, how did everything go with the adoption run?
It went awesome. Yeah, we had over 100 in-person runners, which is about what we did last year. Yeah, it went really smooth. The more we do this, the more it's kind of like clockwork. I mean, I say that for me, who just like shows up and runs. Where my husband, driving for 24 hours without sleep,
like
maybe
clockwork.
You would have a different version of this story, but it really went great. A lot of community involvement. The papers always come out, take pictures of the runners. Gets a lot of buzz going on in the community just about foster care, about adoption. The adoption agency from our county here shows up. Actually, they're all starting to become runners now because of this. Is awesome, or speed walkers, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter as long as they get it done. So I think there was 7 or 8 of them that ran at like 2 or 3 in the morning and did from their building, because we run right by their building at one point, because we run kind of the way the run works is this 125 miles around our county. And so at one point we're running right in Canton, New York, where they're located, and so they pick up there and they run like a 5-mile leg. So yeah, it was awesome. I'm hoping to see, excited to see what God's going to do, how it's going to grow in the future, especially now. I know COVID's not going away, but you always have to be like careful, right? But people are feeling a little bit more comfortable to be able to partake in things, So I'm hoping in the next couple of years too, we'll just see an increase of runners and stuff. So yeah.
That's so cool. So you guys did 125 miles this year?
125 miles, yeah. So, and the weather was nice. So it's about 5-mile legs. We break it up in about 5 or 6 miles each leg. So, and every leg had at least one person. Most of them had 4, 5, 6. Some of them had 10 or 12 people running, which is fun to run with other people, right? And it's not a race. Yeah. So the fast person that shows up, we make them go slow. Because it's dangerous at night, because we have a pacer car that follows them the whole time. So we shine our lights on them. We have people wear, reflective gear, headlamps, that kind of stuff. But still, you don't want a 3 a.m.,
Yes.
15-year-old girl that's running slow being left in the dark, and the other runners, Yeah, so that's always a little bit of a challenge, but it's super fun. And even all the like the runners in our community, they say this is our favorite run of the year because there's nothing like it. I mean, running at like the middle of the night
Yeah,
across the count, there's nothing like it. Like we're not really copying anybody, so it's pretty
that's
cool.
so cool.
So yeah,
Um,
it's good.
could you explain just briefly for anybody that's not aware why you did 125 miles?
Right. So every year it's on National Adoption Day, which is the towards the end of November. The day changes a little bit, November 20th. We run, and the amount of miles that our community runs or whoever wants to join in is equal to how many thousands. So right now there's 125,000 kids in foster care. Well, there's a half a million in foster care, but 125,000 that are freed to be adopted. So that means that they don't have any legal ties to their birth parents for whatever reason. Their parents have maybe
Yeah.
lost their rights or their parents have surrendered their rights. And so they're in the system as, it's put, but basically they may be in a foster home that can adopt or they may be in a group home. So yeah, so we do it in honor of those kids and to bring awareness.
Mm.
A lot of people don't realize how many kids in this country are free to be adopted. And most people look overseas or they look through private adoption. So it's really an awareness, a celebration of adoption too. There's a lot of families that have adopted that join in just to celebrate it. But really, for the community and for the state, New York State, it's an awareness, just bringing awareness to the need. Yeah. So yeah, that's what we do. It's been, let's see, since 2016. So
That's so cool.
it's been that long? No, I lied. That's why I'm wrong. It's 2000. I was like, it can't be that many years. Yeah, since 2018. Yep. So
2000 and you said 19 or
no,
18?
18. Yeah.
2018. So
Yeah.
2018
First
is when
year.
you did that. That was the year you started out doing it by yourself,
That
right?
was
And
the year I
then
attempted to run myself. Yeah. So I didn't make it. So we decided let's
you
expedite.
did make it. You just needed some help. So some other folks got involved at the end, and that's how it blossomed into what it is today. And this
Yeah.
whole thing that's a community event. It's so cool. I love that story.
I really want, honestly, I would love to see, someday just other counties, not even in the state, other states kind of take it on. You know what I mean? And just say, hey, we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna do our own, and we're going to facilitate an adoption run because that would just be, it's just really been awesome for our county.
Mm-hmm.
And just
I
the
was
amount
just
of
thinking
what?
I was just thinking it'd be cool to do that in, somewhere like Alaska where it's just sunny all day long. So they'd be running those people at 2 and 3 in the morning. It would be I don't know if in November. November might be their
Yes,
darkness.
it's
It might be
dark.
their time of darkness. So it'd be dark the whole time.
But that
So
would be
maybe
good
not,
for
but
them. It would be good for them either way because it would be mentally
yeah.
reduced.
But anyway, I think I interrupted you a second ago.
Oh, no, I was just saying that it's just been so awesome for our county in the sense of awareness, but also a lot more people signing up to do foster care. Some of them just
Mm,
fostering, some of them adopting, some of them just doing respite, which all that means is you can be certified and maybe you're not able to take a child like long term, but you could watch them while that foster family goes on. Because a lot of times you can't take your foster child with you out of state. So if they need to go on summer vacation or they just need a break, doing respite is another great way that people can, serve and help these kids.
wow.
Yeah, I have a friend, so good friends of ours, they're in our small group. They started fostering a couple years ago. They were part of the adoption run and they had always had it on their heart. They have one daughter and they're just like, they just say yes. So, like, the first people that they called, it was like, we have, four kids. They're like, four, four, five, six, like really small. Will you take them? And they're like, yes. And
Wow,
so
that's
they went from
incredible.
one kid to five, like immediately. But the coolest part about the story, I mean, they're amazing, is their next door neighbor who they knew obviously because they were neighbors, but she also worked at the elementary school all these kids went to, saw, oh my gosh, I can't believe you guys are doing this. I'm going to go get certified myself to do respite. So whenever my friends have to go and visit family for Christmas time or go on vacation, their next door neighbor is fully certified. She, and she just comes over to the house,
That's
so
so cool.
they have to leave their home. They can still kind of be in, their element, and she watches them. And I'm like, who does that? Like
That's
it's
awesome.
it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's amazing to see how it's spreading
Yeah,
throughout the community.
becoming it's not normal yet, but it's
Sure.
becoming, yeah, it's just and I think it was the same for us. We kept saying, we wanted to adopt, but kept thinking, man, I don't know anyone really that's done this, so
Mm.
just to have that, like to have somebody that you like, hey, I can go talk to them and pick their brain. Um, and the more people now that are involved, the more people you have to kind of glean from. So yeah, it's been kind of cool that way.
Yeah. It's super cool. It's super cool. I love what you guys are doing with the advocacy for adoption and foster care. And it's just cool to see how just by people being around you, whether it's because they're part of the run that you organize or just through, hearing your stories in church or, whatever. But it's just cool to see how uh, people get that same kind of passion. People that maybe hadn't thought about it before, people that hadn't even maybe considered it or didn't know, they weren't aware of how many children really are in the foster care system or what the foster care system is like. How many of these kids, as you mentioned, 125,000 ish currently that are cleared for adoption in the, yeah, cleared for adoption in the foster care system. But do you recommend you said it was called Nesbit?
What?
Or no, that's not the right word. What is it where you said where you're not a
Oh,
full-fledged foster parent, but
respite.
respite, sorry. I don't know what
I'm
Nesbit
like,
is.
I am like
Respite. So
that
I'm
name.
assuming that's an acronym for something.
Yes.
But so do you recommend that to people that, maybe they're not sure if they can handle being a full-fledged foster care parent
Yeah.
right now and they just kind of
That's,
want to
yeah.
get a feel for it?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend that. That's how we started.
Okay.
Um, because we wanted to adopt, but we weren't sure about the whole fostering thing. We're kind of scared of that. Like we're going to fall in love with a child and they're going to take them away from us.
Yeah.
And so they, had recommended, they said, look, why don't you just consider respite? Because you just kind of, basically the social services said it, you're getting your feet wet.
Mm.
It is, all of it's scary, all of it's new, and you got to do all the paperwork and stuff regardless of what you do. So you get to determine what your level of involvement is. And the nice thing about it too was, which a lot of people don't realize this, is you can go through the classes. It's 10 weeks to be certified to be a foster or adoptive parent or to do respite. So it's a lot. But after you're done, you can also put your house on standby or hold. So for example, like I got pregnant soon after we finished the classes, and one of our discussions was, should we pause as far as foster
Ah.
adoption?
Mhm.
It's just kind of another thing. It's nice to know that, because it's just, you feel like you're signing your name on some, like, dotted line and in blood, and you're like, oh gosh, what have I gotten into? It's scary. Like, I don't care how much of a, excitement you have for this, it's still scary, like taking on lives, and not knowing, it really, me and my husband always say adoption and foster care is like the biggest test of faith.
Mm.
Just in general, like you can apply it to your faith, like life, in so many ways. Like, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know if I'll have these kids forever. I don't know. Like, it just, and even in making the decisions, when they call you up and they say, like they said to us, there's a newborn baby. Actually, they said it was a girl, but it's now my son. There's a newborn. We don't even have the information right half the time. So you don't know what's going on, and you kind of are get thrown in. So respite is a really good way to just, okay, how do I feel about this? How do I feel about kids coming into my home, and because you have a lot of emotions, so it really lets you still be, because it's a huge need. Because the thing with
Mm.
the kids in foster care is they are not legally allowed to stay. I think they can be babysat by like a daycare or something, but they cannot stay overnight anywhere unless it's a certified foster home.
Okay. Okay.
So a county like as big as ours, I mean, I knew at one point we only had 40 or 50 foster homes in the whole county. That's not true now. It's more, like 100 and something. But even still, I mean, you're trying to place all the kids that go into care, but then you're also trying to figure
Wow.
out who's going to watch these kids when this family's gone for 2 weeks. And then they end up putting them in other homes with that are, have kids already, which is okay, but that's just stress on them, right? Oh, I have five. Sure, I'll take four more. Like, that's craziness, right? So, I mean, respite is a really good, and even if that's all you ever do, say, you know what, I can't, we even had some people in our church, they're older, their kids are grown, but they're, in good health, retired. They became certified to do respite because they said I could help you. Because me and my husband sometimes, we don't really go on vacations. We go on missions trips. We go on vacation
Yeah.
to Uganda, like third world countries are our vacations. But,
Get like 12 hours off at some point and
yeah.
it feels like a vacation. Yeah.
So, we had a couple people in our church that, yeah, they did that and they just help people and families that, are away. So, yeah, there's a lot of
Mm.
possibilities, but
No, it's beautiful. It's awesome.
it is.
It's so cool. And it's obviously so needed. I mean, when you share, when you share the numbers just of those that are in foster care that are currently cleared for adoption, I know the overall number of kids in foster care is like probably, I think we said last time at half a million or
Yeah.
some
Yep.
crazy number. And I think what you said a minute ago about that friend of yours who just says yes, she just says yes. And then when you were talking again after that, you were talking about how it really is kind of like one of the biggest steps of faith that you can imagine because you don't know what's going to happen. And I just think that sort of, um, I guess like what just being that willingness, if it's something that maybe you somebody that's listening or whatever that has considered or is considering or something like that, but there is all that uncertainty with it. I just think that willingness to stand before the Lord and to just see what he's saying and then just say yes, just to say yes to Jesus. Um, that I think that goes for every area of our lives,
That's
just saying yes to the Lord and being willing to take that step of faith, not knowing what it's going to look like tomorrow or a month from now or a year from now. But just that willingness to kind of say, you know what, I'm going to say yes, I'm going to respond. And I just think that that's such a beautiful thing and something that is obviously so needed as you're pointing out,
that's my husband's motto. People ask him, "Well, how did you get here?" He's like, "I have no idea." I just said yes, and it's true. Like Jesus will take us as far as our yes will allow him. And there's times where we're like,
It's good.
no, right? We do. And I'm not saying be a yes man and say yes to everything. 'Cause then you're just, overwhelmed and you're not doing God's will. But there are certain yeses that, yeah, he requires of us, I think, and he'll take us as far as our yes will allow him to. So
That's really good. That's really good. Well, I want to transition just a little bit. I want to talk to you a little bit about the podcast, the Full Spectrum Parent podcast. It's available on Spotify. It's on iTunes, right? It's
yep.
probably Amazon, all the major players, right? It's available pretty much wherever you can get podcasts. Where else is it available? Because I know you guys have kind of joined up with christianparenting.org as well, which is super exciting. So yeah, talk about that for a second, that partnership and
It's on Google too and Stitcher. I forget them all. It's on everything, honestly, almost all of the
yeah.
ones that are available. Because they added, so yeah, I'll talk a little bit about Christian parenting. So we started in October. We launched our podcast, the Full Spectrum Parent Podcast, which is pretty much for any parent. Because we joke, because our family, I have 5 kids. My son is a typical teen, and then I have 2 kids with severe autism. And then we've adopted 2 who have different struggles like, reactive attachment or this, attention issues. So we just kind of have a full spectrum of parenting possibilities.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we launched in October. I forget the actual start date, but we had one episode released and kind of figuring out all the kinks and all that stuff, Me and my husband do it together. And maybe a week or so later, uh, which was bizarre, the Christian Parenting Network reached out to us and said, "Can we have a phone call?" And I was like, "Well, okay." I didn't even know what a podcast network is, and I'm sure Duke will laugh at this because I know you're like a podcast like guru. Like I had to ask you questions just to get started, so I'm like, I don't even know what this means. Like, do we want to do this? I was like, "Is this a cult?" Like.
Mm. This is a cult, a network.
Like, what do they want from us though? And they like didn't want anything
Is
from
there
us. And it was
is there blood involved in this
yeah.
pledge? Yeah.
No, I mean, and so it's christianparenting.org if you guys want to check them out. They're actually an amazing ministry. It's a nonprofit ministry. Um, I think it started just as far as like a website, and they have a blog that they do, and then they started a online event like a parenting conference. And I don't know how many years it's been, but it's been a while now that they now have launched into kind of the podcast arena and just kind of following where the culture is going, and that more and more people are listening to podcasts. And I believe they have about 20 or 21 podcasts now that are in their network. And their real
Mm.
goal is like their motto is, all about, being the imperfect, perfect parent that God's called you to be. Like just kind of embracing our, our struggles and our weakness. And in that, God, will be strong, and just continuing to learn and grow in our faith and in our walk with Him. So yeah, and I think they have about 21 podcasts, but the cool thing is they really are trying to reach all different kinds of families. They have a podcast
Yeah.
for blended families, like if you've experienced divorce, and
It's so
it's
cool.
like a very particular kind of niche things. So um, they even have a podcast which I actually really enjoy about talking to your kids about money. Like
Wow.
so just have
It's
all these
great.
different kind of
I
real,
wish I would have thought of that.
yeah. So yeah, it's really neat. So they kind of contacted us. We talked for a while, and then we decided, I think it was a couple months later, we officially joined their network. And it's been awesome. It's just been really great. So just kind of reaching a wider audience, and getting to, I mean, they even have like I don't know how often it is. Every so many months, we have like people that we meet with about marketing and tech stuff, and like
Oh,
just
that's
right,
awesome.
like for free. So it's
Yeah.
been a huge, it's been a huge, huge blessing. Yeah, and I'm just excited to see where God takes it.
That's so cool. I think, well, I've said this before, obviously, but I love what you're doing, and I love the fact that you can take like one of those niche areas of a podcast, like you said, talking to your kids about money. Yours, the Full Spectrum Parent Podcast, which is really on a broad scale. It's because of the way you guys talk and share your stories, and because of how open you guys are about the struggles and about the challenges that you face, and you really don't sugarcoat things. You just kind
Right.
of go for it, and you're real. You're not trying to hide things to make yourselves look better or something like that. And I just think that it's so refreshing the way that you guys do it. And so for me, I guess the description of the podcast is like a faith-based autism podcast. The dogs.
I'm laughing. I'm sorry, this is totally interrupting, but I'm laughing because the reason why my dog is barking is because my husband's walking by,
Yo, Greg, what up?
which is even more hilarious because he lives here.
That dog's crazy.
He was like trying to creep by behind me too, and I think that's what made my dog. Sorry, totally
Greg, it's good to hear your voice, buddy.
ruined. Yeah, so
Um,
I mean, the cool thing I think that kind of sets us apart. There's a lot of podcasts about autism, but we're the only one that I could find, and I looked for a long time because I needed one that was Christian and that was uh, based on the Word of God, which seems kind of
Yeah.
weird. But like, there's a lot of medical ones where you're talking a lot about, the medical and the brain and the neurological side of things, which is great and necessary and needed. There's a lot of like naturopathic like
Hmm.
podcasts about autism where like heal your gut and then your child will be better. I don't know
Yeah.
about that one. I tried it. It didn't work for my kids. So. But and then there's a lot of like teacher, whether there's someone in the education field,
Gotcha.
which is great too. Resources for podcasts regarding specifically kids on the spectrum. And then there are some mom ones or parent ones, but again, all of them were really, honestly, just to be honest, they were kind of sad because you'd hear these like
Mm.
sad, hard stories, and I felt like there's no hope in this. Like I wasn't listening to them made me feel a little better because I felt like, well, I can relate to this person.
There's
That
other people out there that go through what I'm
right,
going
and
through.
that's
Yeah.
a big piece of it. But I just felt like the other piece that was missing was like hope. And the only hope we
Yeah.
have is Jesus, right? Like I can't give you anything else. And honestly, that's what you even sense in some of the other podcasts is they're trying to put their hope, and this is something I really hit on hard in other things. Now, granted, if they don't
Mm.
know Jesus, I don't blame them. But you know what I mean? Whether it's this solution over here, or this therapy, or this diet, or whatever it is,
Mhm.
um, it's like you bank and put your trust in it, and just hope like this is going to change our life and help my child. Nothing wrong with that, but it's like I wanted to be able to offer like the true source of hope. Like Jesus is the only one, and not even just to say, oh, like Jesus can miraculously heal my kids. Well, that would be wonderful, and I pray that, but hope in the journey, right? Like hope in
Yes.
the mess, because that's what we all need right now,
Hmm.
right? So
Hope
yeah,
in the
that was
mess.
our goal.
I feel like you should write a book called Hope in the Mess.
Well,
But what I was gonna say a second ago, what I was gonna say before, before I got interrupted by the dog, I just wanted to say that, I don't relate on the level of, I don't have children with autism, um, but I relate so much to you guys and to the way that you talk and the way that talk about your struggles because on some level, we all have struggles, we all have challenges, we all have conflict. We all go like every parent goes through that thing where you're like, "Oh man, did I handle that right?" Or you didn't handle it right. You're like, "I
yeah,
blew it. Like I screwed up my kid just now." Like, you know what I mean? We
yeah,
all we all go through those times, those experiences, and there's so many different areas of things that you guys get into. Let me just say, I really enjoyed the episode that you guys did where you talked about medication,
mm,
because again, from your perspective, you were talking about medication, specifically for your kids, but that applies. I think we could apply that to anything. And some of the stigmas that are attached, you have the parents that say, "Well, if you put your kids on medication, then that means that you're not trusting God." And then you
yeah,
have the other side where it's like, if you don't put your kids on medication, it means you don't care about them, you don't love them, and it's like, hold on, like how about we hear what God is saying for us and that we walk through this the best way that we can for now, for the season that we're in. And if we have to make a different decision later or whatever, but I just think that the openness to go through those things, it really does resonate with me, just as a parent on a very basic level, and I think that it's really really cool. And I was just going to say, I think that what's really cool about the network is that you can have these different niche areas, but just because it's specified to a particular group or a particular segment of the community, it doesn't mean that people that are not necessarily part of that specific
right.
community can't glean from it and get a lot out of it as well. So, but
Yeah,
anyway, it's just super cool.
yeah, and we're totally seeing that. There's a lot of people that listen that don't have special needs kids. And we're always kind of walking that line, like I want it to be, specific sometimes to those needs, but I also like want it to be general to the sense of like you said, we're parents. We're all struggling with a lot of the same things. And I think the more open and vulnerable we are with our own struggles, like that's how we decide our episodes. I mean,
Mm,
it's like we're dealing with this right now. Let's do a
yeah.
podcast on it, right? Because when it's fresh like that and you have all of these questions, concerns, things people say to you, like, it just, yeah, it's real down to earth. This is real life, and I think, coming not from like being, pastors as like a holier than thou thing, but just bringing that Christian, like the Christian culture, or sometimes even like you said, the stigmas with medicine, or special needs even, or healing, or I mean all of
Mm,
those things, like, yeah, sometimes they can seem to be at odds with each other, but I think, as because we're kind of thrown into this, like we've had to figure out, and again, we don't ever try to like tell somebody this is what you need to think or this is what you need to
sure.
do. But more like this is our process. This is how we arrive to where
Hmm.
we are now, whatever that is, we're addressing. So yeah, it's been fun. And we haven't fought too much, so that's good. I got a little worried. I was like, do I want to work this closely with my husband?
That's so funny.
Now you are
That's
married.
so funny.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Um, do you yeah, so I was just thinking as you were talking that, um, I just forgot what I was gonna say. So no, but, I think that even as for me, from my perspective as a pastor, and, I'm sure you all can relate with this too, I think that I probably used to think more that for me to get up and talk about something or to teach about something, I have to have it all figured out, I think
Mhm.
I used to have that idea in my mind, but what
Yeah,
I find more and more is I find myself talking about things and teaching about things and imparting things based on what I'm living, what I'm experiencing, what I'm learning, and even sometimes things that I don't do that well. And I think that there's this community aspect of what we're talking about with the podcast or just with the way that you relate to people, the way that you teach, the way that you instruct, the way that whatever it is. And when we can kind of get together where it's like, look, I'm not just showing you guys my highlight reel, I'm not just showing you guys what I'm so great at and what I'm so perfect at. There might be some things here and there, uh, so, and they're probably very few, but there might be some things here and there where I'm like, you know what? I'm actually pretty good at this.
right.
I've got a pretty good handle on this. I've still not arrived. I'm still not perfect, but whatever. But I think more often than not, I'm probably
Yeah,
talking about things where I'm like, I'm in the boat with you
right.
and like, let's do it. So I think even maybe on a subconscious level, I've just noticed this recently that when I'm teaching now, I'm more so I rarely will say you, like I'll addressing the audience as, you need to learn how to do this. I'm usually putting myself in there. I think even when I write, I've started to do that
Right.
more. And not that one way is right or better than the other, but I just think on a subconscious level for me, I'm kind of like, yeah, like we need to do this. Like this is how we need to learn how to relate to the Lord. This is how we need to learn how to
Exactly.
develop a kingdom lifestyle and how we need to learn to raise our kids and stuff like that. And even if it is something that I do well, I recognize that, like I'm not my doing well with it is like, compared to somebody else might not be good at all. And so
Right.
like there's growth that I need in this area as well. And I really love that aspect of the way that y'all teach and impart your
Yeah, I
wisdom
mean,
to people.
I think as leaders too, if people perceive us as always doing everything right, I mean, we know that's not true, but if there's a perception of that, then we feel like the exception to the rule. So whatever we see God's favor in our life, or God using us, or our kids doing well, or growing in God, they put you over here as this exception. Well, that's because they're an enigma. They're like, we don't know what's going on over there, but my life here, like I need help in my mess, right? Like, so I think
Mm,
the more we're honest. And I think the more you're in leadership, the more that that happens, even when you try for it not to happen, just because I think it's human nature. Like, and so I think that, that's why Paul said, in our weakness, he's strong. Like, we have to constantly boast about our weakness because they can't see
Mm,
us. They have to see Jesus. And the only way they're going to see him working through us if we're constantly being glaringly like obvious, like, no, 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 no. Let me just clarify that. This is not me.
yeah.
Right? Like, but then they can see, wow, look what Jesus is doing in them. Look what he's doing through them. Look what he's doing in their family. And suddenly, at the same time, like you're saying, Duke, they can relate to you. Like, oh,
Yeah.
you did that too. You yelled at your kid too. I can't believe, I mean, we've had people say that to us. I can't, and not
Pastor Jessica,
right,
you yelled at your children?
right. Not a shame, right? More like a, oh
Sure.
my gosh, like I can't believe you guys have gone through this too. I thought it was just me. I thought I was a horrible person, a horrible parent. And, I just think people need to know that so that then they can have hope that, man, Jesus can change me. Man, Jesus can still work in me.
Mm,
Even despite when, I mess up as a parent, God can still restore that. And God, he can make up the difference. So,
absolutely. I think that's a big part of discipleship is, just kind of inviting people into your real life and letting them kind of see those struggles. It's not all about just what you're instructing people to do. It's about them being able to see the authentic you, to kind of seeing you in life, the way that you relate with your family and to people and to the Lord and stuff like that. And
like,
I just think it's so powerful, as you're saying. I think that it's so powerful when people see that. And it's really funny that if we don't see that from our leaders, if we don't see the struggles, if we don't see, the issues and the challenges. I'm not saying you need to like open your,
right.
dirty laundry to everybody and let them see everything and let them hear about every fight you have and let them hear about every breakdown. Like
Oh,
I'm not saying that, but there is an element where, like, I remember experiencing this. Like, I would look at people that were in leadership, people that were in positions of authority, people that I respected and looked up to, and I would just think, like, with all the stuff that I'm struggling with, how could I ever get to that point? Like, how, like, I must not be qualified. I must, and this thing happens in our minds where we disqualify ourselves
exactly.
based on what we think we see, just based on our perception of other people, not knowing that of course that person has their own struggles as well. I'm just not seeing it right now because I'm not with them all the time. I'm not with them when they're home, when they're at their house. And so that vulnerability with leaders is, I think it's so important, it's so powerful, and because I think that people do just kind of develop that thing where they kind of feel isolated or they feel alone in something if they don't see that coming from the
Right.
people that they look up to and respect. And at least, you know, even if it's not saying that you identify with the exact same kind of struggle. I just think as leaders in general, being able to empathize with people where they are. And I do think a big part of that is, being able to be open and vulnerable about the struggles that
Right.
we do have.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you become real, like a real person. I'm a real boy.
For sure. I'm a real boy.
Your voice sounds better than mine.
I
But
don't remember what I don't remember what he's I haven't seen that since I was a kid. I don't remember what his voice actually sounds like, but
that's about right.
I'm sure it was high pitched.
Um, but I was gonna say, or something I was gonna say. Oh, well, just that even I've had people not Christians, reach out to me online or, at the grocery store or whatever, and just basically say, my perception of Christianity has changed. Thank you. Like, maybe not even saying they're following God yet, but I think,
Wow.
like, you break down a wall when people see you as a human, and I honestly think that's when God starts to shine through, because you're not
Mm,
superhuman anymore. You're a human with all these flaws, but they can't help. Even people that aren't Christians, they don't know how to put it into words, but there's something, how people say, what is it
wow.
about you? Right. And I think the reason people can say that, we all know it's God's presence, it's his favor, it's his Holy Spirit being in our life. But I really think the key to that is he shines best in our in our brokenness, in our cracks. Like,
Wow.
yeah, it's been really cool to just connect with people in that way that aren't even, wouldn't call themselves maybe Christians, but they're now kind of a little bit more open, like kind of, because I mean, I think that's how, Jesus
Mm.
had no flaws, but he was so human. Like at the same time, that drew people to him, right? Like I
Absolutely.
was
Yeah.
just preaching a couple weeks ago about when he, appeared to the well, one of the times he appeared to the disciples and he makes them breakfast, and I always just think that's so weird. How many days? Yeah, 40 days, Jesus, to like before you go back up into heaven. Like you probably got a lot of important things to do, and you're like cooking fish and stuff, and like making them breakfast just because he just was so human. Like he was just wanted, that relationship. And I think the more we're vulnerable, the more we display that. So
Yeah. Yeah, what very well said. People are definitely looking for that authenticity, and that's what they got from Jesus, which was the opposite that they were getting from the Pharisees and the religious leaders, because that was all about basically the perspective of the people was, look at them, look how
right,
holy they are, look how
right,
they've got it all together, and it was this. It highlighted to them their sinfulness because they knew that they could never attain to that, or that their perception was that they could never attain to that. And so it just made them feel worse. It made them feel more distant from God. It made them feel like their life was more hopeless than it was. And then when Jesus, the holiest person by like infinity times, that's ever lived, that's ever walked on this earth, and he's approaching people that had again been ostracized, that had been marginalized, and they have this ability now to draw near to him and to get an authentic dose of, this is who God the Father is,
hmm,
by seeing Jesus, by the way that he related to them. And even though he never said, he never gave people permission to continue on living a sinful lifestyle, he never condemned them in their sin. He what's the word I'm looking for, he met them where they were at, he honored them where they were at, and then he called them higher.
yeah,
He because he was able to speak into their lives because they saw him for who he was,
yeah,
and because he related to them, in a personal way. And it's so the heart of God for people, and it's something that I think that as leaders a lot of times that we can miss, that we can forget about that.
yeah,
And we're here on the earth to demonstrate, to represent God well for people, so that they can learn how to relate to him on a personal level, to know how much he loves them. And
hmm,
so often I think that in the church we've just in general over the years at so many different times in so many different ways been so guilty of leading people to feel condemned,
right,
or feeling like they don't measure up, or that they can't have that as strong a connection because of the mistakes that they've had, or the past that they've lived. And I think we need to learn more and more how to be that sort of bridge that people can essentially yeah, just walk through to get closer to God and to grow in their relationship with God.
I don't
Yeah.
remember where it is, but that verse, it's the kindness of God that leads us to repentance, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
so, it's in that, the serving, the making them breakfast, washing their feet, like meeting them where they're at, that they just want to, like, I want everything you have, Jesus. Like, I want, I want to change. I want a different life. And so, I mean, that's what we're called to do as leaders. And I think something you hit on too, Duke, that I just wanted to add to was a big part of leadership too is, and it's not in this culture, obviously we know serving, but availability. Like,
Mm,
I think the
it's
more you become
huge.
a leader and the higher up you go, the more untouchable you become. And Jesus was the exact opposite, right?
Yes, come on.
He was the exact opposite. Like, he was not just approachable, he was like, "Yes, I'll go to your house. Yes, I'll eat with you. I'll even invite myself to your house."
Yeah.
Like, just the exact opposite. Like one author, Christian author that I love is Bob Goff. He's actually going to be a part of the conference that I'm a part of, but he has a big thing on that. Like his number is at the back of every book. And my husband and me, we've called him twice because he has
That's so cool.
he has a ministry in Uganda, and so we had some kids because we work with an orphanage there that we wanted to get into the school, and so we just called the number in the back of the book, and he one ring, ring, ring. Hey, it's Bob Goff. No secretary, no nothing. Talked to him for an
That's
hour and
dope.
a half. I've heard stories. People call him up. He's like, "I'm gonna come pick you up at the airport right now." He doesn't even know these people because he just believes Jesus put me on this planet to love people. I'm gonna be available,
Mm,
and it's
that's
just
incredible.
it's a breath of fresh air because I think that's the way Jesus lived. He wasn't untouchable like the high priest. He was right down there, washing people's feet and just doing life with people. So,
Yeah. One of my favorite um, phrases, statements, from Bill Johnson. He says, hang on, I want to make sure I say it right. Um, Rule with the heart of a servant, serve with the heart of a king.
mm,
And so often that's what, as you said, it's like the more you go up in an organization, the more your favor increases, the more whatever, the higher you go up, whether you're talking about ministry, business, whatever. What typically tends to happen is the more you grow, the more you get, the more authority and influence that you have, the less you're connected with the people.
yes.
That's what typically happens. It's actually what's sought out. That's sought after when it comes to business, because it's like, when you're the employee at McDonald's, you're right
Yeah,
there up front with the people. When you're the
right.
manager, less so. When you're the regional manager, less so. And then when you're like up in owner levels and stuff like that, you never have to deal with people, which is like what everybody wants, when you're talking about McDonald's. But that's not the way it's supposed to be when it comes
Right.
to life, when it comes to ministry, when it comes to, all of that. And I think that we can get to this place where we're so high-minded, and
Hmm.
we think that we've arrived, we've attained to something. And so that translates into that, again, that sort of pharisaical mindset. That's, I need to distance myself from these commoners.
Right.
But with Jesus, like, the holiest, the most perfect, like literally God himself, the one who was seated on the throne in heaven, and he's down touching lepers, man, and he's down, walking from one place to the next. This is one of the things I love so much about Jesus, walking from one place to the next, because he's going to do ministry. He's going to do the will of the Father. But then along the way, he gets interrupted. And rather than say, hold on, I don't have time for you, he stops for the one and he ministers to them, or on some level as well. And it's
Me too.
that I think that's so important in leadership, that I know, like for me, like I don't do this well, and I'm trying to get better at it, is building time into my life
Mhm.
where I'm not so rigid in my schedule, so that I can stop and just living in that sort of openness and awareness of what God is doing, what God is saying in the moment, whether it's with people that I know or don't know, people that are close to me. But like, I can be so like kind of bullheaded sometimes,
Yeah.
and just kind of going forward, trying to get something done. I have a hard time if I'm working on something and there's a deadline. I have a hard time
Yeah.
stopping until it's done. And what it can cause me to do is miss out on something that matters a whole lot more in the moment, because I'm too focused on the next step, or getting this thing
Yeah.
done, or getting this thing accomplished. And that's not what Jesus showed us.
Yeah, that sounds my husband's a lot like that too. He's very like he's task oriented and he's very good. Like he's very focused, which is a great thing to have.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's exactly. You can fall into that, where you're just
Yeah.
you can't see to the left or the right and somebody that needs you.
Yeah. And of course there's balance there, but
Right, right. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
what do you think for you has been your favorite thing so far about hosting or co-hosting with your husband this podcast?
You know what? Honestly, talking about people, I think the coolest thing has been is just connecting with people across the world or people, like families in similar situations as ours that are really struggling. They have a child on the severe end of the spectrum. There's a few people that I have known personally in my life. I have a friend in Ohio that we're close, and our daughters are the same age and very similar, challenges. So I have a few people that I have made that connection with, but it's almost like this has opened the door to like so many. And it's, sometimes it feels a little overwhelming, like I can't help you all, like maybe
Yeah.
this felt like in the crowd when everybody was like, heal me. And I'm like, oh gosh, too many people to help. But like when you take the time for the one, it's honestly, and I don't have all the answers either, like you said, as leaders, we don't necessarily always have the answers, but it's just been really awesome to me too, to just feel like, wow, like, I was able to in this moment like instill hope into this family. Like, because I know like when my daughter was first diagnosed, and my son too, but especially my daughter, because she was the first, it was such a dark time. And
Mm.
I know exactly what people are feeling in those moments. And I had gods, and some of them don't. So even that, like some of the connections I've been able to make, like, some of them aren't even believers, but I'm like, man, I don't know. I can tell you some
Mm.
tips, but at the end of the day, Jesus is like, you need Jesus to get through this. Like,
Yeah.
so it's been such an open door to just kind of speaking into people's lives and connecting with families I will never, probably meet in person, but still know, like, I mean, honestly, I'll tell you a quick story that's kind of crazy. Somebody reached out to me from the West Coast asking a bunch of questions, had a child diagnosed on the spectrum. I have no, I've never met these people. They listened to our podcast. Well, this is about 6 months ago, or maybe a little less than that, 5. And just a month ago, they moved here to my county
Wow.
because of my, and of course I was like, please double check this with the school system. But we have a great county as far as like just resources for children on the spectrum. And so they had just asked me a lot of questions. What kind of school does your child go to? And I won't get into the details of it, but I just kind of explained like, New York State has so much funding for special ed and for autism, and I don't pay anything. And my kid goes to an ABA school 40 hours a week,
Mm.
one-on-one teachers. It really is amazing. And this guy that I was talking to was just like, well, I'm going to call and find out more information. Well, next thing I know, they moved. They live like 15 minutes away. So we're going to go to coffee soon. And I'm like, this is crazy. And I'm kind of like, man, I hope I didn't steer them wrong. They moved across the country. But like, so just crazy stories like that. Like, wow, God,
Yeah.
like hopefully their child's going to get a lot more help and attention too. And we just had a part to play in that. Like, it's pretty cool. Yeah, so that's definitely my favorite part for sure.
So cool. There's definitely also just been like a mass exodus out of the West Coast as well. So,
Yeah, that's true.
but I super love that. I love what this guy did. Like looking at a situation that was going to be better and literally moving
I
across the
couldn't
entire
believe he did it.
country
Like when I
to
talked
get
to
into
him,
that situation.
yeah, he I think
So cool.
he's in construction, so he's kind of able to work wherever. So they just said our child comes first, and we're gonna do what he needs. And I'm like, wow, yeah. So
That's
pretty cool.
great. That's
Yeah.
great. You said something a minute ago, that just made this question pop into my head. So I'm wondering, if I could maybe just ask you a couple of questions or a few questions kind of related to parenting.
Yeah.
But this question kind of popped into my head as you were talking about how you were, these people contact you and you basically say, well, I can give you some tips or some things that have worked for me, but ultimately your answer is Jesus, your source is Jesus, and you can actually go directly to him and he can help you with this. I'm wondering from a parenting perspective, how much of that do you think goes into your lives with you and Greg, the way that you parent your kids, or maybe even on a general sense, how much do you think from your perspective, again, do you think should go into the way that we parent our kids? Because our kids come to us and maybe they have a challenge or they have a struggle or they want to know something. How much of it do you think is us as parents just kind of giving them answers, and how much of it is, you know what? I think it'd be really cool if you were to talk to Jesus about that,
Right.
or, well, what do you think? Even just kind of pointing them back, whether it's going and talking to Jesus, or what do you think the, or what does the Bible say about that, or what do you think the Lord says about that? So,
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a convoluted question, but
No,
if you
I know
could.
what you're saying though. Yeah, I mean, I think like as parents, it's obviously our responsibility to instruct our kids, in the word and following Jesus, but like there's always that tension, right? Like of like I can show you the way, but I can't make you go this way, right? Like and wanting our kids to own their faith, right? And I'm always reminded of that story of, where that guy is crippled and his friends bring him on the mat and they carry him to Jesus. And like I always think of my kids, I think of that story because the truth is like I'm going to try, I'm going to present them to Jesus. This is Jesus. I'm going to bring them to church. I'm going to have these conversations together.
Mm,
I'm going to talk about the Bible. I'm going to, give them their own Bible. Like, but like at the end of the day, it's like you're always just kind of like, I'm going to put them in the presence of God. I think that's a big thing too. Talking about, you know, there's so many things we can do as parents, but to have them be in the presence of God, because in the presence of God, that is where obviously we meet Jesus, but it's also where we're changed, right? It's in those experiences. So I think sometimes we try to do it all like ourselves in a sense, like as Christian parents, we're like, oh my gosh, I got
yeah.
to teach them, all these things. And I've failed and they don't know that Bible story and I'm a horrible parent. And you're just like stressing that you got to like cram all this information in before they like graduate and leave. Right. And it's just like, I don't know. To me, that feels almost like, not again, not that we're not teaching and instructing, but
Sure.
I think that would be the Pharisees like feeling, right? Like, how many laws did they learn? Like that's religion. Like, and yes, we want to implement these, you know, things, but I think the biggest thing is bringing them to Jesus. And then the other thing of it is for us, we really try to, and again, you can't air all your dirty laundry, but even me and my husband really try to be open with our kids about our own struggles in the sense
Mm.
of,
With your kids, you
yeah, with
open with
my
your kids.
kids,
Yeah.
because like if I don't share with them how Jesus is changing me, you know what I
Come
mean?
on.
Like
Yeah.
they will do the same thing that we were talking about in leadership. They'll put us over here. Yeah, my parents. I mean, you hear young adults say this, right? My parents are like crazy Christian people. Like they put you over here in this category, whether that you're, super holy or untouchable or whatever. And it's not personal to them, but it's because like you gotta let them in. And again, you obviously there's discretion. I'm not going to share everything with my kids, but at the same time, they need to see struggles. They need to see when we've messed up and we have to fix it. You know what I mean? And we have to
Hmm.
ask for forgiveness and we have to ask for Jesus to change us. Like I think being real like that too, like it allows them to see Jesus in action and want that for themselves,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something about being a pastor's kid,
Mhm. Lots.
that I think makes it more challenging and there's more pressure. And I remember, just growing up with kids. I mean, I grew up in churches, I grew up in Christian schools, and so, I was around a lot of, PKs, and a lot of these like pastors' kids, they were like the worst.
Yeah.
I'm like, what happened? What happened? And it's so often I think that there could be just so much added pressure. And I think there's so much of I think, I mean, our kids are so good, we don't think they are, but they're so good at picking up on hypocrisy. They're
Mhm.
so good at picking up on that stuff, right? That, and I don't know if hypocrisy is like a tough word, but like, they're so good at picking up on that inauthenticity. They're so good at picking up on things. We think we might be hiding something from them, and they actually know more about it than we realize. And when we're not honest about it, I
Yeah.
think that, if they, in other words, if they hear us preaching or teaching one thing, but see us living a different lifestyle at home, I think they get jaded in their mind, and it causes them to be like, well, what's this all about? And to have a bad taste in their mouth about God, about church, about religion. And, I think that that's something that as pastors, for sure, that we definitely need to guard against and to do our best. And again, it's never going to be perfect, but to do our best to present to them the real version of who we are,
Right.
and yeah.
And I think too, the other thing with that sometimes with pastors' kids is that they can become, and this is a hard thing for us. We definitely struggle with it. Although our kids are great, but the idea that ministry is so demanding, and I think sometimes
For
kids
sure.
feel like, well, that's consumed so much of your time, and I'm over here, remember me? And so I think sometimes that some of that jadedness too, like, my parents are always busy, they're always gone, they're always helping someone else, and they never help me, so really trying
Mm.
to carve out time, like specific time. One thing that we've been trying to do is kind of have time, not just, I mean, obviously family time, but really seeing the value in the one-on-one. My husband's been a big one on this, but like I'm seeing it more even in my own life, like taking just one of the kids to do something, even if it's just
Yeah.
to get an ice cream, or you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be some big,
Yeah.
um because then it's like they're seen, they're heard, especially like, we have a big family, of a loud family, we have special needs, a lot of times, yeah, you're not seen or heard.
Mm.
So I think that that's a huge thing, to just kind of carve out that time, one-on-one time, so that your kids are feeling like they can talk about something they're struggling with, or they just talk about something they're excited about, and just really feel heard, and sometimes just being Jesus to them in that way
Wow.
speaks more than,
Yeah.
teaching them
Yeah.
27 books of the Bible or something.
That's so good. That's so good. That's so practical. And I you and Greg in particular, because you have 5 kids and, a couple of them have special needs and you're also pastors and you write and you do a
Yeah.
podcast and, you have a lot of different things going on in life. So, yeah, like how do you guys handle that? How do you balance it where you're still able to, and I don't really like that word balance. I used to love that. I don't really, cuz I don't think our lives we can become perfectionistic or religious about trying to balance everything, and it's very rarely gonna feel balanced. We're always gonna kind of be probably erring on one side or the other. But yeah, even as far as you guys and you and Greg, your one-on-one time, and then that one-on-one time with the kids and all of that, which every single level of it's important. And at the same time, God has called you guys to have these churches and to plant churches and to, all these different things that are going on. How have you guys kind of navigated through that?
I think one of the things that has helped a lot is like, and I don't know who said this, but like when you rest hard.
Wow.
Like, really rest, and that sounds stupid and like, okay, but like, so for example, today is, my husband always takes Monday off, right? And I
Mm,
mean, half the time he won't even pick up his phone, and I'm like, even this morning before this interview, I was like, your phone is ringing, and he's like, I don't care, and I'm like,
it's
oh,
Monday.
I'm worried for him, like, what if it's an emergency? Like, he really knows how to just completely disconnect and like shut off. No, this is my
Mm,
day off. Like, if someone really needs me, they can drive over here. If something's burning down, the church is burning down. So he's really good at that. And I think, as much as we hate schedules, like I hate schedules, but I think scheduling in, right? That rest day, scheduling in that day, where you're taking your kid out. Like you just have to, and it's non-negotiable. Like I have an appointment, the appointments with my son, but I don't have to tell you that, because
yeah.
something I've been really struggling with, and I mean, I'm sure, anyone in ministry probably does, is the gracious no, of just like learning to say no a lot. Because everyone, the more, and this is the funny thing, the more capable you are, the more people will ask you to do things. And then that means the more you have to say no, which I'm not
Yep.
good at the no part. Right. So if you're like always trying to like please everybody else and, yeah, I can help you, I can do that. So you're just like so spread thin. And that's my big struggle. Now, my husband doesn't have a problem. He's just like, nope, no explanation. Nope. you know,
Wow.
but that's definitely my struggle. And I've been getting better, but really just learning to like, no, I'm setting a schedule, whether it's, this is my writing day, or this is my day off, or this is my day, then I'm taking my son after school. Like it's an appointment. It's not it's not fluid. It's a structured part, just like this
Yeah.
interview structured into my day. It's that same, it's not negotiable. And I think if we really, you know, obviously we can have fluidity in our schedule in general, but those things that matter the most, like those family things, like those don't move. Everything else can move around it. So it's easier said than done, though. Very much so.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. I love that you said that though. Like, yeah, I have an appointment and it's with my son, but it's just as important or more
Yeah.
important as a regular appointment.
And it's
I've even used that before where oh yeah, well I've got an appointment at noon today, and my appointment is like for me to eat lunch and watch a movie because I just need to rest. Like I just need to relax.
Yep, that's the same thing, right? And it feels bad. It feels like you're lying, but not if you've set out, this is what I'm doing. You don't owe an explanation to anybody. It's hard though, because there's people, and I'm sure you've experienced this, you and your wife, but they'll make you feel bad.
Oh, for sure. It's
And
awesome.
it's really hard. That line becomes fuzzy because you're like, I am a pastor. They're not feeling loved right now.
Yeah.
They're feeling like I
That
have
pastor
no,
guilt is
yeah,
real.
I
Yeah.
don't have time for them. And it's really hard. I mean, it's hard to balance friendships in ministry
Mm,
because you get so drained. I'm sure you can relate to this, but you get so
absolutely.
drained by people, and then you want to spend time with those other friendships. But the truth is, sometimes you're just so drained. You need to eat on your couch and watch a movie. Oh yeah, you got to make those times too. But
Yeah. Um, Let me ask you, kind of a branch off from that question. What how do you guys handle and again, I'm sure it's different but between your different kids because 'cause they're different ages and everything, different personalities, different maturity levels. But how would you all handle a situation where there's some kind of a conflict or some kind of a challenge or struggle that you are facing as a family? Like the only good example I can think of right now would be, let's say there's a financial challenge or something
right,
like that. Do you believe in kind of like shielding and sheltering your kids from that to where they don't have any idea that there's something going on? Or do you kind of believe in a little bit more of let's bring them into it? I've heard trains of schools of thought on both sides,
mhm,
and I see value in both sides, and I'm
right,
just curious what your kind of approach has been to this kind of a thing. Like, there's a challenge going on, we can just completely shield our kids from it so that they have no idea that it's going on, or we can kind of let them in a little bit and sort of be a part of us praying about it, praying it through as a family, or they can be a part of just knowing what's going on because they might see us acting differently or they might see these different things. And so
right,
how much of
right,
it do we bring our kids into those challenges and things that we face in life, and how much do we just kind of not let them know
right.
anything? And just
Yeah,
curious what your
I
thoughts are.
think for us now, I don't know if this is across the board for everyone, but I think it really depends on the kid for me.
Hmm.
I know we've talked a lot, like in our podcast and stuff. We talk about our like discipline is different for each of our kids. Obviously, we have special needs, and that makes sense. But I think sometimes we cookie cutter stuff just in general with our kids. But I think we really got to look at each one of them individually. So, for example, something like this, I would I would definitely tell my son, my teenage son, like if there was,
Hmm.
I mean, depending, right? I guess it depends on the type of struggle, but for the most part, I would tell him in part, not in full, so that he could pray, so that he would be aware, because he would be catching all that stuff anyway. But then my two that are adopted, and it's less about their age, although this might change over time, but more about their emotional state. So both of my two that
Gotcha.
are adopted, this is a silly example, but last night someone came. We got a new table and we put our old table on Facebook Marketplace, right? So someone came in a truck to pick it up. $100. It was destroyed, right? Like the kids destroyed this table, and so we give it to them. They're loading it in, and I look, and in the garage, my daughter is bawling, crying, just crying and crying and crying. I mean, cry for 20 minutes afterwards, and I'm like, what is happening? She's like, I drew on that table. She had climbed underneath it,
Aw.
was drawn all over the bottom.
Yeah.
and like was like seriously hurting that that table was leaving, but that's been our table for so long, and I it was just so weird, and I was like, it's gross, we have a new table, we don't, it's fine. But so like I use that silly example. Now she's 8, she's not like 3 or 4, and my son is 9, and I don't know if it's because of the adoption or just their personalities, but their emotional states, I feel more like we'd have to shelter something like that from them, just because, like my son in particular, he thinks a lot. He would lay in his bed thinking and
Mm,
worrying about the thing I shared with him.
wow.
You know what I mean? And almost
Yeah.
taking on that, even if I only shared a part, say it was a money, mom and dad don't have money to pay the mortgage. I feel like he would take. Oh, that's a real thing. I mean, not right now, but it has been. You know, like I feel like he'd take that on and he'd be laying awake thinking about it and getting his pennies from his piggy bank. You know what I mean? And again, it might be because of their age.
Wow.
They are getting older, and it's still definitely for both of them. I just really think you need to look at your child individually, because my son is mature enough to be able to, one, handle that, two, not take it on by himself, but three, be able to see God working through it and pray with us. Where my two that are adopted, I don't feel like they could now. Maybe they will when they're older, but again, I just think there's just that. Yeah, it's definitely a hard thing, but yeah, I just think I would take it one at a time instead of having like a family meeting, you know. And with us, we've
Yeah.
really been able to do that because our family is like everybody's in a different place, you know, in understanding wise, you know.
Sure.
So we've always kind of approached things on an individual basis. But I think even if our family was typical, I would do the same.
Mhm.
Because yeah, I think it could cause their faith to grow. I think they could pray and believe God, you know, if there's something that we're struggling with, if they were in a place where they were mature enough to do that. And I think it could be a benefit to a child. Whereas another child, it could be something that they're just dwelling on and worrying. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like even that personality,
Yeah.
like a worrier versus like someone that's able to take information in and not carry it. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that's an aspect of it that I hadn't really thought about before. But yeah, the emotional
Right.
stability or just the level of, some kids are just more emotional than others, and as you said, some kids will kind of be more prone to worrying and to kind of taking it on themselves and thinking that even thinking that they're part of the problem or
Right. If I wasn't here,
yeah
you wouldn't have to feed me.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah like my son, he's my oldest is 11, and we've had him in karate for the past few years, and he said something recently where he was like, "I don't really need to do karate anymore because, it's like costing you guys money every month and we don't need to." I'm like, "Dude, you do not need to worry about that." And he probably overheard me saying something, honestly, like like there was a reason why he brought that up. He might have overheard me talking to my wife about something and
Yep.
about bills that were due or whatever. And I was like, dude, like that's not your responsibility. Like that's our responsibility, as far as that goes. Like, I
Exactly.
guess we'll let you know if we if we can't afford it anymore and we just can't do it. And there's definitely been times where it's like, oh man, I wish I didn't have this bill. That's one of those bills I always forget about. And
Oh yeah,
it's
I
one of
know.
those things that but I don't put that on him, you know what I mean? And so, but yeah, but there are other things. He's getting older now. And so there's things that I will bring him into just little by little and kind of sharing things with him more. My youngest, he just turned 7, and it's different. It's very different what I would share with my 11-year-old than with my 7-year-old. And
Yeah, I think age
but
is a factor, but I think their personality too, right? Like in the way they
absolutely,
handle things should be, you know, because you can have a 16-year-old that you may not share all that with because of their worrying or stress, right? You know, it just anxiety or like, yeah,
yeah.
just depends.
So little bit more of a personal question. What about do you guys ever fight in front of your kids, you and Greg? Like, would you allow your kids to see you guys fight? I know some people are just very much like, like my kids will never see us fight. And I
Well,
understand the merit to that, but I'm just curious.
no, in theory, that sounds like a really good idea, but in
You can't hide.
reality, like,
Too
we've
many
never
kids, you
been able
can't
to
hide from them.
oh, let's pause. Let's pause right now, and let's walk into the bedroom and have this conversation. I don't know why, maybe we're just not mature enough, but that yeah, so yes, they totally have heard us fight. Yeah, and the
Many
worst part
times.
is when they're like, then tell, my, uncle or, mom or something, mom and dad were fighting about blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh no.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, our kids have definitely, I don't think I mean, obviously if we have to have like a long discussion about something, then it would be, done not around them, something serious. But usually most of the time it's just that it's not serious, right? I got annoyed.
Hmm.
I got annoyed. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like
Yeah.
bickering / getting mad in a moment, but it's really not, And I think sometimes though it's good to be able to model someone getting upset, the other person just, kind of walking away or whatever and like it being okay. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm.
not turning it
Yeah.
into a big thing too. Like, because sometimes I
Yeah.
would be annoyed. I mean, my son does it to me all the time. He'll be annoyed and snap at me, and I'll be like, "Don't say that," and like I don't know. It's real life. People are gonna get upset at you, and you kind of
Yeah.
just gotta be able to continue to not let it, explode, but move along.
Sure. Sure.
So yeah. So I don't know if
It,
that's probably not good parenting advice, but that's
it's
my
probably
life.
not compared to.
I want to do a whole one of the podcast episodes. I don't know if it'll be the next one, but in the future, a whole one about anger from the parent side, but also just like even dealing with special needs and meltdowns, with my daughter and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But so kind of all across the board, one about anger. So I think that'll be a really hot topic.
It's very cool. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have an episode of this podcast that I did with my wife. It might have been with my wife and one of our friends, though. I can't remember if it was just us or if there were three of us, but where it's called like bad parenting or something like that. It's at least it's part of the title. And yeah, we talked about some things, some some
Cool.
things that we've done, but yeah, one of the things that because I identify with what you just said. And one of the things that I try not to do is like if my wife and I have a disagreement about something related to the children,
Right.
that's one area where
That's
I
good.
try to not let them see that because I don't want them to see something that would give them this like subconscious ability to manipulate, like a string to pull on, because they know that there's like disjointedness between mom and dad or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the areas where I try, but again, I've definitely been guilty of that too, of like I probably should have waited to say something about this, when we were, in a different room or whatever, but just kind of in the moment without even really giving it enough thought.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I don't know about that one. Like let's see about this. Like I'm not sure if and so it's never anything like major, at least not that I can think of. But yeah, like those little things where we might not be fully on the same page about something right away.
That makes
And
sense.
I like to not really let them see those things when it's related to them, but again, even on that, I probably haven't done a great job, so. Um, let me come up with one more question for you, just related to parenting and, um, all right, this is forgive the cliché-ness of this question, but what about just like the sex conversation,
Oh
and
gosh.
all of that, just how do you guys handle stuff like that?
Well, it wasn't planned. My oldest, how old was dear when you had your conversation with him? Talk to my husband. He's in the room. 9,
8 or 9.
8 or 9, so young. So I didn't think it. I mean, we had thought, maybe when they're 10 or something, we'll
10, yeah.
down, right? but he started asking questions of my husband, and it was more like, I don't understand how my cousin, like he was trying to figure out family dynamics, but they weren't married, but they were married, and how and my husband was like, people can have a baby without being married, and he was like what? How? And he's like, oh no.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it ended up they had kind of the sex talk in the Taco Bell parking lot, which is my son's favorite restaurant. At the end of the talk, my son was like, I can't believe you just told me this at Taco Bell. He was just, his whole world was destroyed in that moment, really. So yeah, we kind of have, he's the only one we've had the talk with, but my son, Isaac, is now 9. So I'm thinking it's probably going to happen soon just because that was around the
Yeah.
age Jer was. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he was pretty and I'm under the I think as far as just parenting advice on this, the earlier the better. Now, obviously not
Mm.
4 or 5,
Not
but
not two.
because
Yeah.
because they're hearing things in school. Like you would, unfortunately, if your kid goes to a public school, you're being exposed to all kinds of terms, thoughts, conversations, and my husband's stance has always been, I'd rather you hear it from me first, you
Yeah.
know, and then they can also feel like when they hear other things and as time goes on, they can come to the parents because they've already started that conversation. You know what
Yes.
I mean? Like, so as awkward as it is, and maybe, like even in that situation with my son, he was just mortified, and you think, oh God, maybe it was too soon. I really don't think it was because, this stuff, especially when they hit junior high, I mean, they're just going to be bombarded with everything. And we can be, that sounding board if you start the conversation early. So, yeah.
It's really good. That's really good. Yeah, that idea, I guess, of wanting them to hear it from you before they hear it from somebody else, because they hear it from another source, it's going to be convoluted. It's going to have this weird, like
Oh, yeah.
teenager spin on it, or tween spin on it, or whatever it is. Yeah, that's huge, and I think fostering that in them, where they do have that freedom, to come and talk to you about it. If something comes up or they're not sure about something, they heard something, they were like confused about something or
Yeah, and I
whatever.
mean, honestly, my son's done that. Yeah, I mean, he's gonna be 14 now. He's done that since then. I
It's
mean,
great.
less to me and more to my husband, but that's
Sure.
fine. I don't care as long as he's talking to someone. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think I don't even want to think about the girl side of things, and I haven't had to because my daughter is 12, but she has special needs, so there isn't really the cognitive ability to understand. So, but my youngest is 8, and yeah, that will be. I think it'll be. It's a little bit different with girls too. I think so, but we'll see. A couple years probably.
So my wife is due next month, and we're expecting a baby girl.
She was having a baby. Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm
Um,
terrified. I mean, I've got years. I've got a lot of time to get ready for it,
oh,
but
so yeah,
that
because you don't have any girls,
terrifies me.
huh?
Yeah, we have 2 boys.
Wow. That's
So,
exciting though.
yeah. Yeah, we're stoked.
Oh,
We're really pumped. Yeah.
that's awesome. Aw. He's feeling good health wise and stuff.
What'd you say? Is
Your
she
wife
feeling good?
well?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's been doing pretty good. She's never gotten like the morning with any of our kids, like the morning sickness, and like, I know they call it morning sickness, but I know for a lot of women it happens all day long. It's like she never really had that. I mean, every once in a while, but like probably count them on one hand the amount of times that she
Wow.
actually,
She's lucky.
felt like that, nauseated feeling or whatever. She's done well. We're kind of in the home stretch. I think she's at about to be 35 weeks.
Wow.
So yeah, yeah,
That's
we're pretty
exciting.
pumped. It's
So
cool.
it's a whole new world to be a dad to a girl, just so you know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it's gonna change me
Yeah.
in ways that I'm not ready for. But I'm ready for the adventure.
Yep.
We kind of it was intentional, I'll say. Like we're having her on purpose.
Right.
And but our old, our youngest was 6 at the time when she got pregnant, and I was kind of in that we had always had this idea that we wanted to have more kids, but at the same time a lot of life went by and we were very, comfortable where we
Right.
were.
Starting
I was
over.
like, do we really want to do this again? But after really, thinking about things, and we were like, you know what? I don't want to I guess my thought was like, I don't want to be older and like now we've got grandkids running around and stuff like that, and have this thought that my family's not as big as
Right.
it could have been. You know what I mean? Like right now it seems to matter more because it's happening now, but in the future I think we're gonna, well, for sure, you know what I mean? But it's
Yeah.
gonna be, but anyway, we're excited, we're ready for the adventure. And
Oh,
just
that's
diapers and sleepless nights coming up. So
right. I'm trying to convince my husband for one more, but he's not on board. So I don't know.
seems like y'all have enough, but
I know that's what he says.
that's just um well, Jessica, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Before we kind of start closing this down, let's talk a little bit about the conference from the christianparenting.org conference that's coming up next month. It is, right?
Yeah, it's April 8th. So we, as part of our podcast network, Christian Parenting, host a digital parenting conference every year. It only right now it's only $29, which is like I've never heard of a conference this cheap. And
It's
there's
awesome.
40 different speakers, teaching sessions basically on parenting, which is amazing. So yeah, if you want to know more information, Bob Goff is one of the main speakers. I mentioned him earlier. Paul Tripp is there. Gary Thomas, who's written Sacred Marriage and Sacred Parenting.
Mm,
A lot of really awesome, well-known, well-respected Christian speakers. Yeah, so all it is it's $29 to register if you register by the 16th of March. So it's only a couple more days. After that, I think it's $49. But on April 8th, all 40 of the sessions will be released to you. But the cool thing about this, which is something unique to an online conference too, is you have access to them for an entire year. So until
yeah, that's cool.
31st of this year, you could watch one parenting, session a week or something. Like you don't have to try to cram all of these teachings in at once. You might want to watch, a couple of the main speakers and then wait a week, and there's all kinds of topics like mental health, parenting through the pandemic, living undistracted, all kinds of really cool, practical, parenting stuff. So yeah, just I think Duke's has a link, right? Am I saying that? Is that right? It's the
Yeah. Yes. I have, so can they go to christianparenting.org and find it, or is there a specific link that we want
there,
to
they can do either.
share?
There is a
Okay.
link. Maybe I didn't share it with you, but or they can go, yeah, christianparenting.org. You just
You
click on.
probably did. I'll look back. Either way, I'll if I
Yeah,
don't have it, I'll get it from you. I'll make sure we put it in the show notes,
awesome.
and we'll go from there. And then for anybody that's watching this online, I'll go ahead and I'll put it in like a comment or something like that, a link that's clickable so that they can
Perfect.
check it out from there. And all of that's just, I mean, that's an incredible resource, and it's super. So for $29, I think there's just a couple days left on that, right? And
Yeah.
then the price goes up. So jump on it quick and get that for $29. That's awesome. You can't beat that.
No, you can't even go out to eat with that or fill a quarter of your tank right now.
And you get it for a whole year.
Yeah. So
It's very cool. That's very cool. Well, congratulations to you and Greg, Jessica, for just what you've done already with the podcast. Really, just for being obedient to getting rolling with it. Even kind of having those thoughts as you expressed, like those thoughts at the beginning of,
yeah.
do we want to do a podcast? Like, do we want to do that? But kind of seeing that need,
Yeah.
something that you were looking for that you couldn't find, and then recognizing that, you know what, there's probably a whole bunch of other people out there that are like me, that are like us in a similar situation.
Right.
They're looking for resources, they're looking for hope. And so kind of taking on that responsibility and just being that willingness to just do it and to launch out. And it's really cool that christianparenting.org picked it up so quickly, and it's just a beautiful thing. So congratulations on the success that you guys have had so far with that, and super appreciate what you guys do. And
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. It's always good.
Yeah, my pleasure. We can also tell people they can check out jessicahurlbut.org, or excuse me, .com,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
To find out a little bit more about you and what you do, and some of the resources that you have available there. Don't forget to check out the Full Spectrum Parent podcast, again, on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and also available at christianparenting.org as well. And anything else? Am I leaving out anything, Jess?
No, I think we're good.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for taking the time to check out this conversation today. I hope that it blessed you or challenged you in some way. If it did, if you consider subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting, leaving a review, I'd love to hear your questions or your thoughts or anything like that on anything that we discussed today. Appreciate you guys. Hope you have an awesome rest of your week. Jessica and Greg, love you guys, and talk to you soon, okay?
Thank you.